don't get stuck in the thick of the thin things. Make the big leaps sooner. I think I kind of was like, okay, I'll get to that big leap later, but just, figure out what it takes. I just wait too long. I just get caught. It's almost like the paralysis by analysis, like, oh, I don't know how to figure this out. So
I'm really excited to talk with you today. Why don't you give me a little bit about your background? What were you doing before? And what was your, prior job to owning this business? And what made you jump into this entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dave Seberg up here in Santa Cruz, California. And I actually come from a marketing background entirely in video. So I studied broadcast journalism back in 2000. And since then, I went into TV broadcasting for a few years. But eventually, really, my career took off when I left into the advertising agency side of things. So for the past 17 years, I've run a video agency up here in Santa Cruz, which is really close to Silicon Valley. So a lot of the the big brands, Google, Apple, Cisco, HP, we do tons of videos for those types of companies. And we have a studio here in Santa Cruz. So that has been my entire life. It's all I've done. It's the service world, which is very different. I've learned from the product world. For service, it's like you can only, as much work as you can do is what you get paid for. And even as our agency grew in the years, it was interesting because as you become bigger and take on more projects, you take on more filmers and editors and graphic artists and writers and all these things. And so your company grows, and it almost became a one-to-one. Like as the company scaled, the revenue scaled, but the profit didn't necessarily scale because you're just trying to match the cost to produce. And so in the back of my head for the last, probably even 10 years, it's been intriguing to get into the widget world, because with products, of course, it's infinitely scalable based on your product and what you can do. So that's been there, but how do you get there was one of the things I struggle with. You kind of know what you know in life. I've been a 20-year professional as a video producer, director, and editor, and that's what I do. And so how do you kind of make this transition? And then I have this old boat I've been working on. This is where my story takes a little bit of a jump, but I have this old boat I've been working on for probably the better part of 10 years, the 1958 powerboat, really cool project. One of those like love-hate relationships. But I got to the point where I needed fiberglass work done on this boat, and I met a guy here in Santa Cruz who's one of the better known boat fiberglass guys, and he came to look at it. He's like, oh, that's going to be $20,000 to do that. I'm like, okay, I have two. And as we talked, he found out I was a video producer, and he's like, well, you know what? I have this product totally unrelated to boats. I have this product I've been working on. And I'm finally ready to kind of launch it and get it going. And I need a video for it. How about you work on videos for this product, and I'll work on your boat? And that's what began the relationship with my now business partner for Container Creations. I started making videos for this product he created, which is it's an adapter for shipping containers. So, we've all seen shipping containers out there, and the fad we're seeing is small homes or tiny homes using shipping containers, and that's really a small percentage of the shipping container market. I think most shipping containers are bought by people with land, in Kansas, Texas, the middle of the country, where they just need storage for their farm tools or whatever they have. Because shipping containers are great because they're cheap, relatively speaking. You can get a 8-foot by 40-foot container for $5,000. If you were to build a storage shed that big, it'd be really expensive with wood and lumber and assembly. Shipping containers, you can move them around really easily. Just put them on a flatbed truck and plop them down. But the problem with them is that they have no ventilation. They're steel boxes. And so this idea that Chris, my business partner, came up with is what would it take to put a turbine or a vent on the roof of a container? Problem is that they're corrugated. A container isn't flat like a piece of plywood for a roof. So if you were to go to Home Depot and try to buy a roof vent, it won't fit. And what people have done in the past is they buy a flat vent and they literally like hammer, to match the corrugation. And so Chris, as a fiberglass guy, was like, well, what if I made a mold that matched the corrugation? So you could basically cut a square hole in your shipping container and then use this adapter, which is basically a corrugated flange, and it would sit perfectly on the container and create a ring for a turbine or whatever kind of vent you want to throw on there. So I started making these videos for him, and he had been making these things by hand in his boat shop for 5 years. So for 5 years, prior to meeting me, he had a little assembly line where he'd hand make these things, and they sold, year over year, he was doing about $80,000 a year selling these things. And so when I looked up, eventually he came to me, he's like, hey, I finally am going to go to a metal manufacturer and mass produce these things, but I have no e-commerce experience. He's not a digital guy, right? He's a hands-on genius engineer boat guy. And of course, with my marketing background, it seemed like a good fit. So he said, "Do you want to partner on this thing and actually help me launch this, digitally?" So, I looked at his books and I saw that he was doing $80,000 a year for 5 years straight with no advertising, just on Shopify, just a simple site, not promoting it, no growth, but no decline, just a steady sales. I was like, man, there's an opportunity here. I think like if you actually let people know this product really exists on the digital realm. And so that's when in 2022 is kind of fall of 2022 is when we decided to partner up on this thing. At that point, as a classic engineer, the company name was Universal Shipping Container Components. And the website was uscc-us.com. It's like impossible to remember, right? Like I couldn't even find the website half the time. And I was like, okay, we need to rebrand. We need a name that's catchy, a URL that's memorable, and something we can start building around. So that's where Container Creations was available as a URL. We went and got, made a really cool logo around it, got the trademarks and all that kind of stuff. So we rebranded, created a whole new LLC in fall of 22, Container Creations LLC. And so really 2023, like January 2023 is when I really consider that like my day one. Like, I had a couple of months, November, December, to sort of figure out all that business stuff, open bank accounts and, get the website up. January 2023, entirely on Shopify, starting doing the sales, started kind of, I started doing studio shots of the product and working on a video and just kind of just building the site, started getting into Google advertising, just performance max Google ads. I'm learning all this stuff on the fly. I know how to make videos. I don't know e-commerce. I don't know digital advertising from that, like a PPC perspective. I just knew it from a little bit of a video perspective. And right away, the sales were just chunking along. And it was like every month, we're a little bit seasonal because it's a ventilation product. So, during the winter months, there's just less people looking for vents on a shipping container. It's not until springtime when containers start getting a lot of moisture in them. That's when people start looking. And then summertime when it's 110 degrees and the containers become like 180 degrees, people think vents. So there's definitely a spike. But like even with that, every single month, the sales were increasing far over the previous 5 years, month over month. And so this is 2023. I'm still full-time as the CEO and creative director of a video agency. This is what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing full-time. This was just like nights and weekends, just, on the laptop, trying to like build this digital ecosystem around this new company that we're trying to create. And I know nothing about shipping containers. I know nothing about manufacturing. I know nothing about even Shopify. I just learned about this time. We're not on Amazon yet. And so as the months kind of take on and we kind of get through, summertime, the sales are going really well. One of the big problems we ran into is that, especially working in metals, is there's a long lead time. Because from when I place an order with a manufacturer, they have to order raw materials and then the stamping process, the 300-ton hydraulic press, they have to get all cranked up. They press these things, then cut them and then paint them and put the meshing in, all that kind of stuff. So from when I order with a manufacturer to us receiving it with the 45-day ocean freight time, it's 3.5 months about from when I place the order till I get it. But at this time, we're kind of buying as we go. Like as sales create revenue, we make enough money to then put a down deposit on the next round of adapters. Not very many. We're talking about 300, 400 of these things. And then as we make money, we kind of keep having this like overlap. So twice in 2023, we ran out of inventory, where it's just like, the sales were going way faster than I was anticipating or even could afford to buy adapters. And so I'm leading up to that as like lesson number one, running out of inventory is just death. It's just really, your sales kind of like really cut off short. At around the same time, I think it was around March or April of 23 is when we actually I started poking around on Amazon. I was like, okay, I think this is a great Amazon product. No idea how to do that. Like literally none. Just starting from scratch, I watched one of Travis's videos early on, which is why this was cool when I heard from you, because I was like, okay, this is crazy. He's one of the first people I came across on YouTube for, how to even start working in the Amazon realm. So I create the Amazon listing. So I think it was around like May, June is when we first ran out of inventory, which now means both the Shopify site and the Amazon site are kind of at a standstill. The only way to work around that I could come across was if you, on Amazon, change your shipping time to like, we ship in 45 days, so you're basically, if someone goes to buy it and it's June 1st, it's like, it'll ship on July 15th. And what I found was we had a significant drop in sales. It cost us tens of thousands of dollars in sales, but the good news was it still retains some percentage of sales. There's still some percentage of people that are like, you know what, I'll pay for it now, get the shipping part, started. And same thing on Shopify. I changed it to pre-order now for, shipping in July. So anyway, this brings us through 2023 now. I'm starting to get the groove of Shopify and Amazon, starting to get like the supply chain down. I have a conversation flowing with my manufacturer. I'm understanding the process there, understanding a little bit of freight, but all of it is shipping to this little like warehouse art studio next to my house. Like there's not even a roll-up door. Like literally when pallets would arrive, I would have to break them. We work in metal, so they're huge pallets. I would have to break down these pallets and one box at a time, carrying me through this tiny front door into this small warehouse. And every single order that was coming through on Shopify and Amazon, I was hand packing, sometimes with my 12-year-old son, just, dunk dunk. At the time we had an installation kit that came with it that had screws and driver bits and all the things you need. All of those things, I was still hand packing myself into little baggies. We'd buy 10,000 screws and 10,000 drill bits, and literally on, in our living room at home, just putting them into little baggies and stuff. And so it's just this process. Eventually I talked to my manufacturer, of course, like, oh yeah, we can make those. And of course they made them for a third of the price of what I was paying, not to mention my time packing them and stuff. So 2023 is all about that. I'm just figuring out how this all moves, all part-time. This is all nights and weekends, just chiseling away when I can. Orders are constantly coming in. So it's starting to get to the point that, like, every day I'm leaving the agency office and I'm racing to the warehouse to box up some stuff to then drive them to the UPS store to ship them out, And then once it got to the end of 2023, I was like, you know what? I think the sales are there. Like the growth is there, even with this like beginning of dabbling in, Shopify and Amazon and advertising. And at the same time, I'm hitting 16, 17 years running this video agency. I'm just burnt out. It got to the point where I wasn't excited about new projects. I wasn't really that my heart. I could sense that my passion was shifting to this building this new thing, and so that's when I made the leap. It was in fall of 2023 that I told my business partners that I'd been with my 3 other business partners for that whole time. We all were kind of owners of the company at this point, and I just said, look, I think it's time for me to do something new. They could sense it, they know me like family, and they could sense I was ready to move on. So I said, January 1st, I'm selling my ownership shares to you guys and moving on. And that leads us to last year, and that was the leap. You guys, talking with your team, it's all about like, when did you make this leap? How did you make it? That was that kind of like crux moment where 2 things are happening simultaneously. One, I'm making a huge career change, like all of a sudden from this like identity as this, creative director for a video agency to now essentially an operations manager for an e-com company. That's one thing. And the second part was we weren't making enough money to pay me. So the new, Container Creations, this new company, every dollar you're making, you're just putting back into inventory or some sort of logistical thing or something, more boxes, more supplies, whatever. So there was this kind of jump there between, this is 2024 now, January through, I think it was about April, where I was basically working for free for Container Creations with everything on the line. I have a 1-year-old baby, where you gotta survive, you gotta make the rent, and just hustling full time. Basically, it's kind of like that do or die. You just got to put everything into it. And it worked. It was like the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. That's the thing I've learned about this business. People ask me, they're all like, oh, you're so lucky, man. You just get to like work by yourself and do what you want. You can, work when you want to or not. And it's, you've heard that expression that entrepreneurs leave their 40-hour a week job to work 80 hours a week for themselves. And it's
yeah.
Like, it's a lot of that. It's like you kind of, but it's not work, right? Like it's so different when it's your own jam and you're like excited about every new image you upload or new blog you write or new ad, whatever. So that 2024, early 2024 was scary. There's no way around it. Like, it's like the sales are happening, but the money's not there. And then slowly as we hit what becomes our peak season in spring, I was like, wow, we're actually doing enough sales where I think I can start paying myself at least a nominal salary just to start covering my own rent. And, my wife works too, which helps. We needed to make a ton of money, but it was like just enough to get by. And then starting in 2024 springtime, I actually put myself on full-time salary, just to like, $60,000 a year, right? Just something to help cover my time because I'm doing this full time. Health insurance, getting coverage through that. And so as that has started building, everything was basically cascading on itself. It seems like as the wheel, as I look at, our growth in terms of sales, it just either you could look over, year over year, like this April April 24 compared to April 23 compared to April 22, it's 200% jump, year over year. So once you start hitting the summer, it was like, this is actually happening. Like I'm actually a full-time employee of my own company selling products on Amazon and Shopify. And at this point, for 23 and early 24, Amazon and Shopify were about 50-50 of sales. And then now fast forward, Amazon, is probably more like 2/3 of sales, and probably I anticipate will probably become 75%. And who knows, we'll dive into some of this other stuff, but you slowly start, it's a decision you have to make. But I decided to make it. If you start buying into the Amazon infrastructure and logistical system that they have in place, for someone who's by themselves trying to do all this stuff, there's a cost to it, but there's also a massive benefit in terms of the time and resources that they can provide to help run a business like this without dealing with 3PLs and warehousing here and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's 2024. That wrapped up, and now here we are in 2025, and we're jamming.
Yeah, no, I love it. And the numbers that you shared on the sheet, are those just from Amazon, or is this Amazon and Shopify?
I think that's just Amazon. I think.
Oh, wow. And
yeah.
you're doing zero PPC?
No, we're doing PPC now. Yeah.
You're doing it now, but you haven't done it.
We did. No, we were doing. I was doing like I had. I think it was in. God, timeline's kind of tough, but maybe in about a year ago, an Amazon rep hit me up and they're like, "Oh, we're with Amazon ads. We can help you set this up." And they sort of set up, 2 or 3 PPC ads that I just let go. Like I don't know what I'm doing, so I just kind of just let them run. They whenever I looked at them, the ROI was great on them, and I was just like, okay, this is
oh, good,
doing well enough. But now currently I'm working with a sort of Amazon agency that does sort of everything. They do the ads, they do listing creative, they do SEO, and we kind of work in a partnership that way. And they've taken it to a whole nother level. Like I look into the Amazon ads now, I had 2 or 3, they have like 40, right? Because they're doing a lot of testing on all the different pieces,
Yeah, I would like to jump into some of that stuff, but first I would like to ask you some like fire questions about the beginning of the product. So you said initially your partner, your business partner, is the one who came up with this product. He was working on it somehow on the side. He works on boats, but he managed to figure out a solution to a problem that maybe he had something to do with at some point in his life, I'm guessing.
He had a shipping container as his office, and he needed a vent, so he made
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, got it. I don't know if I missed that part, but yeah, that makes sense. And was there anything out there that's like competitive, or like the way he came up with it, he solved that problem, he made it easier to install? Was there anything like that out there?
Crazily not. There are sidewall vents, so there are little strip vents that you can cut out of the corrugation and stick on the sidewall. There was no one had really addressed the roof vent issue. And obviously roof makes the most sense, right? Heat goes up straight up, so you want to come out the top. Turbines, they're basically called like whirlybird turbines or wind powered turbines. You see them, they look like mushrooms on the top of warehouses and things. Like there was nothing out there that would allow you to put those on a roof. And what's really critical, the most critical thing, I do want to spend a lot of time talking about this at some point, because I think it'll help a lot of people, is the patent. And not just a design patent, which we have. Design patents are great and all, there's just limitations, but he actually got a utility patent on this thing, basically saying, if you use a corrugated flange to put an adapter on a shipping container, that falls under this utility. And it has played out. We'll talk about the Apex program here a little later too, because I think it's amazing how it worked out and how powerful that utility patent can be. So he had that, and so when I partnered with him, we took the utility patent and assigned it to Container Creations, and that kind of really is the backbone of
nice. And at the time when he asked you, or you offered to partner up with him to do all the digital marketing and all the digital aspects, did you do any market research? Did you use any tools to see if there's like any demand for this product online?
I did not. I honestly, I looked at his sales, and that was enough for me to know that there's something there. I mean, I did a Google searching for events and could tell that there was nothing out there. And when he told me how to utility patent too, that definitely perked my ears, right? Because it's in things like this, if there's nothing else out there and you have it, one of two things: either it's not going to sell well because there's not a demand, or will sell well because there is a demand and other people are going to do it too. So that utility patent is sort of the wall between that protection that actually allows you to have growth without getting saturated.
And did he have some kind of a place to sell it from, or was he just selling it through word of mouth?
He created a Shopify site years earlier. I think back in 2018, 2017, he had a Shopify site. So it was one of the older style Shopify sites. And he was doing the same thing I eventually was doing. I inherited his process of hand boxing them one order at a time and putting the screws and everything in a bag. And I think one of the cool things he did early on too was he created this adapter, but he's so particular, engineers, like he's a boat guy. Everything he does is perfect, like perfect, that he didn't want people screwing up the installation of these things. And so he was actually shipping them, he wouldn't just send the screws with it, but it's also like the exact drill bit. And he put in 2 drill bits in case they break one of the drill bits when they're working on it, and he wanted even like the driver bit. Most people have a driver bit, but he's like, no, I want to make sure that they don't strip the screws, that they use the exact size driver bit, right? He included the adhesive, which there's no roof adapter in the world that comes with adhesive. We eventually removed that because it became a logistical challenge. But the point was, from the very beginning, he was very focused on the customer installing it properly. But that translated to like really happy customers who would receive this kit. They're not just getting like a metal plate and now they got to go to Home Depot and figure out, all the things they need to install it. It was like you open this kit up and you could tell, we had this awesome instruction. The instructions were like, a book because he wants them to follow all these steps, But it paid off because I think, even on his old Shopify site, the reviews, everyone's just like, my God, this clearly is coming from someone who puts a lot of care into this adapter and wants to make sure you install it right.
Yeah, I can see the reviews on Amazon are great, and people did comment that how easy it is to set up. That definitely shows. I had a question about like packaging design, logo, all of that. Was that something that you did when you came in? You're like, okay, let's create a brand identity to this product.
Yeah, from the video world's not far from the branding world, obviously, right? When big companies come to us for videos, the brand, if anything, it's like the brand comes to life in a video. So I lived in a brand world for a really long time, and also my own background. I love Photoshop. I learned it 20 years ago, and I tell kids all the time, I'm like, learn Photoshop. If nothing else, you can use it for pretty much everything. Not just doctoring photos, but like any, yes, Illustrator is better if you're coming up with logos and stuff. But you can do a ton of that in Photoshop if you kind of know what you're doing. So thankfully, I have a knack for that and a passion for it. So yeah, right away the branding came from there. But on the packaging question, packaging is still brown box. There's nothing there's nothing retail about it. I think where the branding really comes through is obviously on the website, all that stuff, but the instruction manual that comes with it feels very like on brand. And then the logo just has allowed us to expand imagery and website and all that stuff to just have a vibe, very clean look.
Did you hire a graphic designer to do the logo, or?
I had an idea for the logo. I think I knew generally what I wanted. I've actually watched your videos on this. So Fiverr for me is more of a place to like spitball ideas. I can't think of a time I've ever hired a Fiverr person that like slam dunked something. But it's what I like to do is hire like 5 different Fiverr people, give them all sort of same direction, and just most of it's total garbage, but like a lot of it, they just hit something here and there. And this one guy kind of hit this like those 2 C's that kind of formed this shipping container. It was very rough, but when I saw that, I was like, oh wow, what a cool way to look at the dimension of the container and add these C's. And so from there, I took it and spent a lot of time refining it. But yeah, Fiverr, I'll give them credit for definitely kind of coming with that initial conceptual notion.
Yeah, definitely. Fiverr is a great source, and there are services also out there that help with that as well. Like 99 Design is one of them, where you get a bunch of designs from different designers, and you can kind of pick which design you like the most and go from there. There's also agencies that help you with that. We work with an agency called FBA Creatives. They do all our graphic designs, logo, and it's like a one-stop shop for packaging design, logo, images, all of that, which is kind of cool. Saves you all the hassle of trying to like hire different Fiverr. Like you said, you can get a slam dunk when you hire on Fiverr. It's always like testing and whatnot. So it's nice to have like a trusted one-stop shop that they do a very good job.
How are they in terms of pricing? Are they pretty competitive?
Yeah, they're very competitive, great pricing, and we partner up with them, so we get a 50% discount with them if you ever want to use them. They're FBA Creatives. Okay. Now you did mention that there was a $9,000 cost on design. What was that for?
Oh, you know what? That was design on the product. So that was a design.
So that was part of production.
Part of production, yeah. Less. Sorry, that was less on design, on creative. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And what kind of service was that? Was that like part of the manufacturer themselves, or was it
So we had
outside?
those engineers. We had a couple engineers. One was a brainchild engineering. I'm good friends with Dan. He's a company that kind of helps people take ideas and design them in CAD and engineering. And then also we had a local engineer here who was actually like a blueprint engineer. Because really, with this product, there's a lot about the specs down to millimeters and the radius and angles of the corrugation. So it was, different than other products maybe in a lot of ways, but there was just kind of a lot of time on creating those models.
And if you don't mind me asking, how much did you spend on Fiverr for
Fine.
the logo?
Little design stuff, I'd say $1,000 maybe on the high end, not much.
All right. And tooling. So was the design that you paid for, was that also for designing the tooling, also like the blueprint for the tooling?
Exactly. That gives them the design for tooling. And then tooling, the metal part is single stamp. So it uses a 300-ton press and, just like, gong, gong, and the tool, so the part that stamps down is shaped just like our product. And so it's crushing this, the metal sheet into our shape. So that, and this is where, it's a great conversation too about, manufacturing China versus Mexico versus the US. Metal, unfortunately, it's sad. I mean, US used to be a dominant force when it came to metal manufacturing. It's almost non-existent in the US now. And if it is, you have to do it on a scale that's, way bigger than we're capable of. But even tooling, if, I've looked into cost to get this exact part tooled in America is about $100,000 just for the tool, just for the metal piece. Wow. And in China, really about 1/10 the cost. So basically $10,000. Now you have the thing that makes the stamp for your part.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And samples, once you created the tool, I'm guessing throughout that process they were sending you samples to see which one, or to see that you have the final design to your liking, to the top quality.
And it kind of comes with a little bit of the tooling cost. I think I had 196. I think they charged us that at one point for one of the revisions or something. But it's pretty much, for us, it started with a welded part, like hand welded, and then we invested in the tooling, put 50% down, and then they stamp out a few. And at that point, you're really getting into like production samples, versus like prototype samples. It's more like that's like the first off the line. Like, are these, meeting the requirements and all that kind of stuff.
And how did you find your manufacturer?
We found them through MFG, I think is that what it's called? Yeah, MFG. So it's basically like a manufacturing marketplace. And so, on MFG, you would upload your design. There's multiple NDAs that happen. MFG has NDAs where the manufacturers that partner with them, and you can also upload your own NDA to be like, hey, look, it's kind of the scariest part, honestly, is uploading. You're uploading these designs that you don't want to get ripped off, and they're going out to dozens of manufacturers. But at some point, you got to trust the process. What you get in return is dozens of bids, and that's the challenge. And bids, there's kind of the three parts to a bid. One is the tooling cost, and then two is the cost per unit. And then three, which is more of like a subsidiary of two, is what's your minimum order quantity. And all those numbers play with each other in different ways. Like the tooling cost is somewhat negotiable. And then, the cost per unit, if you're buying 1,000 units, 5,000 units, or 50,000 units, is going to change dramatically. And so, between, you get dozens of bids that are all over the place. One might be $2,000 tooling, but $40 per part if you buy 1,000, and someone else is $20,000 tooling, but $20 per part, So between cost, which is one part of it, and then reviews, right? Like, not all manufacturers are the same. They're, and that's where I think a place like MFG is nice, is they're very, as a marketplace, they have reviews on their site. And so you have the ability to at least look what other customers are saying about this manufacturer. Obviously, if there's a manufacturer that the price is amazing, you go there and it's all 2 stars and people are like, they don't deliver on time, it's not whatever, forget about it. It's a deal breaker. It's not dissimilar from Amazon when it comes to reviews. A poorly reviewed product is dead.
And they have manufacturers worldwide, or is this for
It
China?
is worldwide. Yeah, you pick where you want to go.
And you said you were able to upload an NDA for them to sign before you work with them?
You either accept their NDA and say, I'm fine with yours, or you can upload your own and say, I won't submit it to anyone until they return this specifically. So
did you guys have to talk to multiple manufacturers before deciding on one?
We did. So you go through the person's pricing, you start kind of limiting them, and it's a little bit of like any kind of pricing thing where you kind of throw away the bottom ones, you throw away the top ones, for various reasons. You sort of like land in your middle pool, and then you start going through reviews and start, okay, these guys are too low. Wow, these guys 5-star across the board, and then you kind of now you're back down to maybe 5 to 10 manufacturers. And that's when you start the emailing process of like just start communicating with them. Communicating with China is its own thing. I've realized, a lot of them use translators, and so there's a little bit of loss in translation and sentence structures and things like that can be a little bit challenging. But you get a pretty good, going back 2 or 3 times, start understanding what this communication is going to be like with this particular partner. You get a sense for how much are they involved in their engineering team to understand the issues you still have to figure out, and so through that you start landing on who you think you're going to move with. And that's where it's tough. As a little side story, we now sell Whirlybird turbines. And so I went through this exact same process. The difference was that was a white label process. So that was us being like, okay, there's 20, and that was through Alibaba. So there's 20 turbine manufacturers. I got bids from all of them on what their turbines cost, and I went through the communication. And then and look over here because I got 7 turbines sitting over here. I had them, the top 7, all send their turbine, and it was crazy. I mean, the difference between them was vast. Like the $5 one felt like a $5 one, and the $30 one felt like a $30 one, and then there was the middle. So that's easier because I could ask for samples, test the samples, and finally through all those different things like how well did they work with, their reviews, the quality of their product, and their cost. You can kind of land on one. This is tougher because you can't get a sample from them until you sort of pull the trigger a little bit. You need to start going down the road. In our case, we were able to get like I said, a hand welded sample that's still, but you can't just do that. I can't go to 5 manufacturers like, hey, everyone make me a hand welded part, and let's see who comes up with the best, So there is definitely a leap of faith you need to take at some point, like a lot of things in life, and say, this seems like the partner we want to work with, and you start going down the road with them. And there's the tooling cost, like in our case, it was, 50% down for the tooling. So $5,000 down. And then we don't pay the last $5,000 until we approve the production sample. So if it does, we go down the road and they just can't nail it, it's just not coming out right. It's a $5,000 loss to move on to another company. So it's kind of the nature of this. I think, in plastics, it's a little simpler. I think, the tooling is less expensive and you can get 3D prints and things. There's things that can help you move along the process easier than a single stamp metal piece. So
that's true. 3D printing now is incredible what you can do with it.
Unbelievable for the prototyping process for sure.
Yeah, so that's amazing. You had to take a leap of faith with your manufacturer and put in an order for the tool to be designed. And yes, so that's really smart that you paid half upfront and saved the other half as a trade assurance for your purchase, to make sure that they follow through with what they said. And I'm sure that they don't want to lose another $5,000. That's so they want to make sure that they do a good job. And
that's a good point. The manufacturers want to please, and they want your business. That's they're doing everything they can to get it. So if you've done all the due diligence that I described before, you're probably landing on and any one of those 5 probably could work because you've kind of done your vetting and their pricing is in the right place based on all the things that they what I mean. So and all the manufacturers I've talked to have been fantastic experiences. Really amazing.
And you put here that your first order was 232 units for $9,000, $9,377 to be exact. And then it cost you almost $1,400 to ship it from China to the US. I'm guessing that was sea shipping.
Sorry, which page are you on here?
Still at the startup cost.
Oh, sorry. Let's see here.
So there was shipping from the manufacturer.
That one,
I'm guessing that was sea shipping.
I think, what? So it might get a little complicated. I'm not sure if it's worth even getting into this. This is interesting. So the manufacturer we landed on is a US-based manufacturer that has a plant in China. So it's something to consider for people that are new to the whole process. And Chris, my business partner, had already lined up with them prior to me coming on board. And even after having been on board, I agree with the decision. And there's certainly, you can call them a middleman if you want. I mean, they are in some level a middleman, and there was a cost to that. But when you look at the other bids out there, it wasn't extraordinarily more. Maybe instead of $18 per unit, it was going to be $22 per unit. But what it meant was I have a US-based company, they're in Long Beach, that I talked to, and they talked to the manufacturer. So they were dealing with a lot of that direct to manufacturer communication. Their pricing structure included the shipping and the cost of goods because they ship so many things from China. They sort of just, whether it's us and all their other clients, they just keep filling up containers and shipping them to Long Beach. And when it arrives in Long Beach, now it's on me to ship to Santa Cruz to then have the pallets here that I could unpack and ship out. So that was actually the shipping cost from Long Beach to Santa Cruz to get pallets moved, through a shipping company. So a little different than I'm doing it now. We've now, if you fast forward, we're using Amazon Global Logistics, even with them straight from China to, Amazon warehouses and such. So, which still
great.
But yeah,
that's perfect. That saves you a ton.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah, it's massive savings and time and energy too.
Yeah, those must be really heavy. That to cost you almost $1,400 to ground shipping from Long Beach to Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
But also like shipping trucks do cost almost this much, which makes sense. So you've ordered 232 units. Did you have any big issues with your initial production run and the shipping prior to first launching online? Did you have any major issues or unexpected?
I don't think so. We were doing because back then, this first shipment, we weren't even on Amazon yet. I think that was coming. That shipment was coming in around January 2023. So this was all pretty much a Shopify world at this point. We were doing pre-orders on Shopify, we were selling them back in November and December, saying, hey, they'll ship out, mid-January, and so they were selling along the way, which I really encourage people to do. Pre-selling, it's great. It's it's kind of like the middle ground between crowdfunding and just waiting to launch. Just make sure. The only advice I have: make sure these things are on the boat before you start, because we made that mistake once where we kind of did a pre-sale and then the manufacturer had held up a full month. The lead time they gave me was wrong, and now all of a sudden all these customers you said this was shipping in August, and so I wait for on the boat because now I know there's an actual timeline in place, but.
Tell me about that a little bit. Do you use any social media advertising or Google advertising for Shopify?
No, we did just Performance Max, Google Ads, Performance Max, because all I knew at the time, and quite frankly, I don't even know that much more now, but all I knew at the time is when you search for a product, you type in shipping container vent on Google, at the very top, there's a whole row of images of product. And I just was like, how do you get there? How do you get your product to be one of those little images on top? I didn't care about SEO so much. I didn't care about being in the list. I mean, that matters, but I really wanted the image of our product to pop up with ads. So that's where Performance Max comes in for Google Ads. So I just set up a simple Performance Max ad, and it just ran really well. The one thing to note, I think, and it's really worth noting for our story in particular, there is so little competition in this space that it allowed us to launch really quickly. And I mean, we were a top 10 search result almost out of the gates, because it was just if you type in shipping container vent, there's only 3 or 4 of us are even making vents, and this vent we do, if you type in roof vent, we're the only one, so it's you go right to the top. So all advertising was almost optimized out of the gate by that very the competition for the clicks are way less. If you're trying to get into other mass products, it'd be really tough to win those competitive bids for PPC and such. So we had that to our advantage for sure. So it made me look a lot smarter than I was, I think, because the results were great, but I think they would have been great without any real effort.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Honestly, it's a great product and solves a problem that obviously it sounds like a lot of people are facing. Yeah. And while you're creating the brand identity and all of that, did your partner have UPC codes already in place, or did you have to get those?
Yeah,
so you got those yourself?
Yeah, I forget at what point that came up. I think started working with a company that was trying to get us into retail, and they're like, "Oh, you need UPC." I'm like, "How?" I mean, you've seen them your whole life. I know what a UPC code is. How the hell you get one? I have no idea. So you just this is like I try. My business partner Chris, he he more helps design future products, but he's almost a silent partner when it comes to all this stuff. Like I handle 100% of all this stuff, and I just try to explain to him like half of what I do is just figure out what the heck it is I need to do, and so you search in. How do you get a UPC code? And then YouTube videos pop up and whatever. And then you hear about, I don't know if you got GTIN or GTIN, you find out about that site. And I talked to a buddy who's on Amazon, like, oh yeah, you go on there, I'm like, you can just buy a barcode. It seems like, it's like stuff you don't think about. And so, I figured out how to buy a barcode, and, we have so few products. Like, if you're a company that has like lots of SKUs or variations, you can buy these UPC codes in bulk, as you guys know. For me, it's like, I just buy $30 a pop. I only have 5 products, so it's like, not that big of a deal. But yeah, all of a sudden you kind of feel legit. You're all of a sudden like have a barcode for your product, and you can slap it on the side. And so just started all of that just kind of when it was needed. Like until someone asked for a barcode, I didn't think of getting one, and then once they do, and same thing with
Amazon, they ask you for the barcode when you set up the listing.
Yeah,
it's like
that made it what started off the barcode hunt.
Yeah. So and you went to GS1, right? That's what we recommend as well.
Sorry, GS1. That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
GS1. Yeah. And the barcode itself is called GTIN. So you
right.
You were saying that, yeah. And you bought 2 barcodes or 5 barcodes at the time?
At the beginning, I think it was just the one originally. It was just that one adapter.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was 2. Yeah, I guess there's 2. Oh, you may have it. I had what was the other thing? Maybe for the 2-pack. I think we had like a 1-pack and a 2-pack, and I was like, oh,
I see.
That was like a SKU variation,
That makes sense. And lastly, the LLC and the trademark, did you do that yourself, or did you hire a service to do it for you?
I think I did one of the big. I had to look it up. I know I did with Trademark Engine was one, and then the LLC. I think I may have done. It's been a couple of years. I can't remember who I went with here.
That's fine. I was just asking.
Okay. I think it was like Zen Business or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So whatever it costs, I think they're like $249 for set up, and then you pay the extra fees for the LLC. So whatever normal cost is for these things is what I paid. I didn't do anything above and beyond. The only other thing in California, an LLC has an $800 fee. It's more than other states, so you do pay $800 a year.
Right.
So there's that.
You gotta love California, yeah. And did they do the trademark for you as well, or
Trademark Engine helped me do the trademark for Container Creations and whatever that ends. I think it's like $300 plus 300. It's probably $600. I would say, when it's all said and done.
For both, or just the trademark?
For the trademark was $600, and then I think the LLC was probably $500 is about right.
Got it. And I'm guessing now, like before launching on Amazon, you did the photos yourself for Amazon, because that's your profession. You did the photos yourself.
To be honest, I all the photos you see on our Amazon listing, I've taken with my cell phone. So you don't overthink it. I think what the advantage I bring to the table is I know Photoshop so well. I can take, if I showed you all those images originally, they're yellow and this and that because I just did it in terrible lighting or whatever like that. And then in Photoshop, you get rid of all the blemishes and make it more brilliant and contrast and sharp, all that kind of stuff, and you can make an image look really good. I mean, even downstairs, I have one of those kind of like the black product boxes, right? Like it creates like a white world, so that's what I use now. Whenever we have a new product, I throw it in there, take a bunch of pictures, and then cut them out. But yeah, I think 0 on photos. I didn't hire anybody.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool. And what was your first month to launch on Amazon?
Sales wise, or what month?
Both sales wise and which month was it?
Let me see here. It was our first week, March 8th, I think, is when we started.
March 8th of 2023.
2023. Yeah, we sold $560 in that first week. The first month, in March, we sold $3,600.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
I know. It's pretty crazy that, and I think another thing worth noting too, as people listen to this, is that our product's really expensive, right? Our product's almost $200. There's a lot of people selling products that are $5, $10, $15, $20. And so it's a quantity game, right? Like $3,600 is really, divide that by 200. What are we looking at here? It's only 18 units. So it helps put in perspective, because, and also with a higher, more expensive product, there's higher costs, right? Like we are, landed were about $40 per unit. And then, you take away Amazon's 15% of $200 is a lot more than 15% of $20. I mean, in terms of a dollar of value.
Definitely.
So, and then the shipping, our product's big and heavy. So the average shipping cost is $20 per unit. Just the shipping, just for me to print out a label and ship it. So, numbers can be deceptive. I've definitely learned that,
So you were doing FBM?
FBM. Yep.
Oh, okay. So you're paying for the shipping.
Yep.
Got it.
That was for a long time too. I'm trying to remember when I went on FBA. I'd have to look back I'll have to get back to you on when we switched over to FBA. I feel like it was even last year, possibly. I think I went a whole year of FBM.
So all of 2023 was FBM.
I'm pretty sure. I got to figure out when that time fly. It's like I've been just crank. I can't quite remember, but we definitely did FBM for quite some time. I knew FBA was out there. I knew I wanted that Prime badge really bad. I really wanted to be a 2-day shipping and all that stuff. I think it was more just a logistical, like I said, it's like every 3 months is when we're getting new stuff. And as that's happening, I'm trying to figure out like, how do you even do FBA? Like, where do I even send this stuff? And, trying to figure out with our manufacturer. When we originally did FBA, the first shipments would go from China to Long Beach to Santa Cruz. And I'm talking pallets, big, heavy pallets. But then Long Beach to Santa Cruz, and then Santa Cruz to 5 different Amazon warehouses, right? Because Amazon's like, you can send it to one place and then we're going to charge you $2,000, or you can send it to 5 places and we'll waive the $2,000. So I'd be, sitting out here at my warehouse, and 5 trucks would show up throughout the day, and I'd be loading pallets up, all over the place. So, that's the FBM was definitely, the transition to FBA was tough until finally we now have, like I said, the global logistics, where it's like, even our manufacturer, quite honestly, they had never done Amazon FBA. So even for them, it was a whole new thing having Amazon come to their plant in China to pick stuff up. FBA doesn't want pallets either. So that was, even though we have 500 boxes, which you would think would be easier to move in pallets, they want 500 individual boxes, that they're hand loading into trucks and stuff. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We ship pallets to Amazon.
They charge you a palletizing fee. They prefer it to be not, when I say individual boxes, they're still cartons, but they don't want pallets. I mean, you can do pallets if you have it palletized. Just for us, we found out that our manufacturer had an additional palletization cost, right, for the wood pallets and the packing, and then Amazon charged a pallet fee if you want to palletize. So
I see.
I think it's just easier for them to, from what I had an Amazon rep here for a year, which is another thing we're talking about, because that was incredible. I'll talk about that in one sec. But he said that they basically, by not palletizing, they're able to fill every square inch of a container. They just do like the Tetris style, just like packing. Amazon prefers, whereas pallets, you can't stack them necessarily. There's gaps that you can't fill and all that kind of stuff. So they try to promote that. But the Amazon rep I'm talking about, in January, I got this email from Amazon saying, "Hey, I'm with Amazon. We're hitting up new businesses that seem like they're doing really well. I can be your rep for the year. Just give me a call." And I thought it was like a sales thing or some outside thing. And it actually was an Amazon rep who is there just to help you with anything you need Amazon related. Like, he's like, "I'm with you for 1 year." He's like, "You have me from January 1st to December 31st. I'm at your disposal. Any question you have about your listing or variations or FBA or global, anything, you just hit him up." And his name was Rob, great friend. I'm kind of bummed. It's January 14th. I lost Rob now as of December 31st. But I would certainly say, if you were contacted, it felt like just another Amazon. They send lots of sales emails about like, "Oh, do this, do that, whatever." But it helped. It catapulted me. Actually, that's, now that I'm talking about it, I think Rob's what got me into FBA, because I think it was like, he was like, "You really, this is the way to go, and here's how you do it." And he helped show me all the steps, and it was a huge asset to have him help figure that stuff out.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, that's pretty cool with Amazon. They do that in the beginning. They reach out to you, try to help you as much as possible. If you have any issues, they assign a rep for you. And I like how you broke it down here by quarters. It makes it a little easier. Yeah. So Q1, 2023, which really ended like right away because you launched in March.
Yeah.
But amazing, 26 units sold for a high priced item on Amazon. That's pretty cool. What did you learn like from that initial launch moving on to Q2? What do you feel like something that you took with you to improve moving forward in that little area?
I mean, it was really the listing quality. Like, I think around this point, I was learning about Amazon A+ content. I didn't know what that was or understand that, and you're just kind of like you're spending a lot of time. It's so funny. I've been shopping on Amazon like everybody for 10 years, but you just kind of take in, you're shopping. Oh, that's cool. I'll buy it. But you're not like analyzing the listings. You're not looking at them being like, oh, wow, look how well they laid out their value proproposition, or look how good their imagery is. And, in default too, we also subconsciously recognize when we see a listing that like feels, I want to use the word, it just feels foreign, I guess is the only way. You can tell that the images like seem just like not quite right, like they used AI or they used poor imagery, or like the language they use just doesn't feel right. You can just tell whether it's a really well done brand or whether it's something that's kind of a knockoff that's quick and stuff. So anyway, I spent a lot of time looking into other listings and just seeing what they're doing, especially the competitors, right? You got to know what they're looking at. And the competitive edge in me became like, okay, this is where branding matters. I want people, when they click on the listing right away, to be like, okay, this is a very strong brand. Like, I can tell that this is a quality product, that the messaging is very clear about what we do and how we do it. For us in particular, one of our biggest challenges is 80% of containers are the same corrugation, but there's 20% that are not. So if you look at our listing, it's like, it says it's for 3.5-inch corrugation. One of the worst things you can have on Amazon, as we know, is returns. You don't want people returning products. And certainly the equally bad thing is bad reviews. And so early on, I wasn't very, you're trying to sell as many as possible. So I was being a little vague on like what it fit, just because it's like, oh, let's sell as many as possible. Very quickly, we started getting returns for people saying, hey, this doesn't fit my shipping container, or a review saying like, what is this thing? It doesn't even fit. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So that's when we really started changing our listing to make sure, like, measure before you buy. Here's what it only fits this size container. Be very clear about up front.
That's really important.
Yeah, super important.
So you figured that out right away and
very quickly. Yeah,
very quickly. Nice.
Yeah. And then the A+, I can't remember when I started A+, but it was pretty early on. And I heard about it. I was like, why do some listings have so much more? Like, some just have images and some have, you keep scrolling and there's all this cool stuff. And that's, and to me, A+ content is a very bizarre naming for that. It should be, to me, it's more like, I guess that's what A+ is, but it feels like premium listing or something, like once I figured out, okay, you need to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to get A+ content, I think you need to have trademarks in a brand. Your brand needs to be trademarked.
Brand registry.
Brand registry, yeah. So, thankfully I had all that ready to go. So I went through the brand registry process and finally started making imagery for the A+ content. And very quickly it started feeling like, oh, wow, this, even objectively speaking, this does not look like a guy in a warehouse selling vents. It really felt like a big company that, is doing the right thing.
I love that. And in the second quarter of 2023, you sold out of the entire first production run that you ordered from the manufacturer. Yeah. So you've sold 230 units, which is amazing. Like, how did you feel in this quarter?
It was incredible. It's like great and scary at the same time. This is where all of a sudden, we didn't have money, that we didn't have a lot of prior investment. The way I joined the company was helping pay off a lot of the debts that were there for the patents and the tooling and all that kind of stuff that Chris was like, I don't have the money for this. And I was like, okay, I'll take a loan and I'll pay that off. But we really started this company after paying off debts with $0. So I'm not saying we started with zero because it took money to get the patents and all this stuff. But once, for me, starting in Q1 of 2023, it's like, no joke, we'd have like $850 in the bank, And so I was waiting. Oh, that was another thing. All these sales started happening on Amazon. And then I'm like, wait, why aren't they paying me? Like, where's the money? And that's when I learned, it's obvious once you learn it, but there's the 30-day holding period, right? Like, you make sales, but they hold the money for 30 days to help in case there's returns or whatever. And so very quickly I realized I was on a delayed payment schedule from Amazon, to get money to buy more inventory. So it was a little, definitely at first it was dicey because you're trying to buy as much inventory as possible with very little funds. And so I think somewhere in here, I think I had placed my second order of whatever 200 some units, I think in like December. And so as you can see here in Q3, we had sold out of batch 1, we'll call it. Batch 2 had arrived and was selling out. And now look at Q4, you can see what happened. that 106 in Q4 is because we ran out of inventory. You know, there's a hit there because it was just like there was periods where we had nothing, and you could see that the inventory definitely dropped out. You know, so thankfully there was still a lot of that was the pre-order thing I did where I was like, okay, you know, ships in 45 days, and at least we had some sales. Otherwise, Q4 would have been, you know, abysmal. But that was my lesson. I was like, okay, we can't run out again.
Yeah, I can see that. But look at the shift in 2024. I mean, your sales has gone up. And I'm guessing that's when you switched to FBA, because it sounds like
that must have been
Amazon does promote your listing a little bit better when you're FBA versus FBM.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's somewhere in between Q1 and Q2 is when you switched to FBA.
Yeah, it must have been right around there. And between that and the seasonal trend that now exists for us, which is, you know, Q2 is really where we start firing. You know, April, May, June is really when it starts kicking up. I think everything was now hitting on all cylinders. You know, I've had a full year to optimize all the listings, and don't forget, Shopify is happening kind of simultaneously all this too, which is great. But even on the Amazon side, I think, you know, Amazon ads are running efficiently. We're now on FBA. I have plenty of inventory going, and I think it's where it really started to catch fire. And I mean, you can see that jump there from Q1 to Q2. This is where it really got exciting. And I think, you know, don't forget, Q1 of 2024 is when I was not paying myself a salary. You know, I'm still like, okay, you know, like we're doing this, and it was kind of chugging along. It was in the beginning of Q2, so it was like, you know, right around April when the sales really started spiking, and then May I was like, oh wow, this is now we're selling. I mean, you know, we're starting to do, what is that, you know, 50,000 in 3 months. So what is that, about 16,000 a month is starting to become a new average. You know, I was like, okay, well, there's some room here to start pulling out some of the revenue to help support myself running this thing. And that brings us through where we are now. And you can see the Q4 drop there in 2024, that's getting a little bit back into the seasonal effect of things.
And I wanted to ask you, because right now the listing, did you run out of stock currently in Q4 of this year?
No, I'm trying to look at because the units sold seems low for the revenue is not matching the units sold. I'm trying to figure out where that. I'll have to recheck these numbers, make sure they're correct. I do this pretty quickly. Make sure that something seems wrong about that, looking at the units sold.
Yeah, no worries. And if you possibly can, if you can add the PPC into there as well, just to give us a understanding. And I know we're over time right now. I don't want to keep you much longer. I'm sure you have a busy schedule. I do want to ask.
I have time if you have it. So if you want to keep on stuff, that's fine.
Yeah, of course.
But go ahead. What do you want to ask?
I wanted to ask you, like, what is something that you've learned during this year that, you know, that's allowing you, you know, during this time that you're going to help you improve throughout this year? Was it the FBA? Was there something else also that you're learning this year to make your listing improve, or anything particular? Maybe
there's two things really. One is new productization. You know, we added, one of the challenges to our product was it was I don't want to call it, it was an adapter, so it's a bridge product. So you want to if you want to get a turbine on your roof, you buy our adapter, so then you can put a turbine on. For a long time, we didn't sell the turbines. So for a lot of people, it's like it gets you halfway there, right? Like you buy our adapter, but now you need to shop for a turbine, and now we're like, well, what turbine will fit your adapter? And what if I buy the wrong one? I got to return it. You know? So I was noticing from a lot of customers, they're like, can you just sell the whole thing? And that's where, you know, somewhere, and I'll have to figure this out too, is when we started selling the turbines, that really boosted sales, because people now like, okay, now through you, I can buy an adapter and a turbine that's guaranteed to fit because you made it. Container Creations made it to put on that adapter. And I know that has, you know, really spiked the sales. And for us, the turbine is a little bit of a lost leader. Like it's an expensive product. You know, a turbine comes in a box that's 18 by 18. It's huge, and it's expensive to ship. You know, most people I ship the turbine to, it costs us $55 to ship. You know, everyone expects free shipping now. They just expect it all the time. And so they buy the turbine. You know, that's a huge cost you know, we only sell it for $125. It costs us $40 landed. We spend $55 on ship. We're already at $100 before even paying any fees. And so we don't really make profit on the turbine, but I have seen a boost in sales of the adapters as people are seeing it as an all-in-one product. And, you know, at some point you might have to raise the price a little bit, but so new products, certainly, you know, if you look at our listing now, there's the 1-pack, the 2-pack, and the turbine. You know, even the 2-pack concept was a huge deal. You know, a lot of people with 40-foot containers need 2 of these things. And so it's kind of that classic thing. It's like, would you rather buy one for $180 or 2 for 300, you get and for us, it helps too, because pack and a 2-pack, they inset to each other really well. So the package size is almost identical. It's obviously an extra 6 or 7 pounds, but shipping is not that much more for a 2-pack for us. On the manufacturing side, we have a little bit of a savings on the 2-packs just because it's easier to put them together. But that 2-packs have been wildly successful, I would say. And we didn't start selling those, I don't think, for about a full year. It kind of dawned on me. I was like, we should sell a 2-pack. But of course, something worth noting with Amazon, they always want you to pack it. They want everything in one box if possible. Like, you could do a virtual bundle of a 2-pack, where they get sent 2 1-packs. It's not the same thing. Like, the same issue we're running into with this turbine. Right now, you can buy a single pack and a turbine, add them both to cart. But we created a new listing, which is them as one unit, like they're together. And that's outselling our buying them separately. But right now, I'm currently packing them by hand. I'm back to that again. I'm back to packing turbines and 1-packs together into one big box, because Amazon, if you want to have it as its own SKU, it has to be its own independent box. So that's one thing, is kind of figuring out variations and new products. That's, if I were to sum up what I'm trying to say there, are critical to growth. At some point, people want more things to help them do what they're doing. And then the second thing, what was it? I wanted to talk about the patent thing. I wasn't sure if that was. I'll have to come back to it. That was the one thing I know for sure that is.
Yeah, we didn't discuss the patent, so if you want to go ahead and talk about that.
So we had the nightmare situation. It feels like a nightmare. Trust me, when you're running a new business and you've got a new product, is like, I go on to Amazon, and right next to our product is a knockoff, like our exact product with some variation, but our exact product. Clearly one of those knockoff things where the imagery was like bizarre. Like, they even had an image of it on a sidewall of a container when it doesn't go on a sidewall of a container. Like, they clearly don't know the product. They just, analytics have shown them this is a good selling product, so they're just going to make it. So right away, I go into kind of a panic, because 2 things happen when knockoffs come out. One is, of course, they're coming in at a lower price point. So now it creates a price problem, right? Where people are now looking at it going, well, yours is 170, theirs is 125. It looks identical. Now you need to go into like a price war. And 2, it dilutes the brand a little bit. Like, this is a product that we created and we have it at a certain level of quality, but now there's this like other version of it that is hard for people to see the differences of. So immediately I'm like, what's the solution here? And so I started going down the road of, how does Amazon help fight patent infringement? That's the IP is a critical thing. We spent, in total to date, we've spent probably, no joke, definitely at least 20,000 on patents, because we've done reissuings and things like that. So I'm like, man, we really want to leverage these patents. And Amazon came out with the coolest program. I think they did it about 2 years ago, called the Apex program. Do you know what that stands for?
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Let me look it up real quick. Amazon.
And when did you start seeing the copycats come on?
The copycats came on mid last year. So when I looked up how to fight patent infringement, that's when I found Amazon Apex, which is the Amazon Patent Evaluation Express. And what their solution for this was, which I think is so cool, is okay, so I'm the company with the patent, and I see a knockoff appear, and I say, I want to dispute this knockoff as an infringement of our IP. You submit a form through Apex, and in the form through Apex is very simple. You submit your patent, and you say which one of your claims is being infringed upon by this competitor. Then you also give them the right to charge you $4,000 for this claim. So basically, I'm putting $4,000 on the table to say I'm fighting this infringement. At that point, they go to the company that's potentially or allegedly infringing on your product, and they say to them, hey, there's been a claim against you that you're infringing. Here's what their claim is. You're going against this one of their patent claims. If you want to fight it, you also need to put $4,000 on the table. So no one's spent any money. You're putting it into a holding account. So if they agree to the process, saying, hey, you know what, we don't think we're infringing, we have every right to sell this product, they put $4,000 on the table. At that point, Amazon goes to an unbiased third-party litigator, and they say, you look at this case and you decide whether or not it's infringement. At that point, the loser pays the $4,000. So if it is infringement, this other company will lose their $4,000. They get delisted. I get my $4,000 back. If they decide, hey, nope, it's not infringement, they have a right to sell that product, I lose my $4,000 and they get to keep on going. And I think it's such a cool, simple concept. I think $4,000 is a palatable amount for a company to have to say, look, and especially if you're confident, like in my case, it was a slam dunk. I mean, they actually infringed on, on a utility patent, you have 3 independent claims about your product. They were infringing on 2 of the 3 independent claims when they only need to infringe on 1 of them to even be a problem. So I knew we were in a great situation. So we did the patent form, which is very simple. And then the other company has, I think, 10 days or 14 days to accept the challenge. Basically, it's a challenge. And they did not accept the challenge, and they were delisted within 2 weeks. So this whole process from me seeing them listed next to us to them no longer on Amazon was less than 3 weeks.
Oh, that's amazing.
It felt like a huge victory. We spent all this money in patents. After a while, you're like,
and your partner already had the patents, right? Before you even launched on Amazon. So it was already, because I know patents take a long time to, they take a few years by themselves. So that's amazing that you already had that.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't, you would have had to like apply for that, and that would have taken a few years for you to get it. If you didn't have a patent, do you think Amazon Apex or Apex program would have worked?
And they also are very specific that it has to be utility patent. So it's not just design, because design patents are a lot easier to get. I mean, design patent in its simplest form is you upload an image of your product and they're saying that image is patented. So any variation of that image to some degree doesn't get coverage. So it's, we got the design patent just because in our case, it was a very specific design, which is the corrugation, but we decided to go utility just for full coverage. But just so you know, the Apex program only works for utility patents, which they're much harder to get.
Yeah, it is, because you can get a provisional patent a lot easier, but a utility patent takes years to get one, and it costs a lot of money as well.
Yeah.
That's amazing. 3 weeks is a great turnaround for a problem like this.
Actually, it's funny. I have their when I saw it listed, I bought it on Amazon right away. So this is actually the knockoff product here. It got shipped. It actually is the difference. It's actually our original product. So our new ones looks a little different, but in a way they gave us a prototype to have on the wall for posterity. But
that's funny.
Yeah, it felt good. It was something that I don't think many people know about, and I know for a lot of people that don't have utility patents, it's like, well, that doesn't help me. But for those of you that do, it's powerful. I mean, just to close this out, if there's a company that comes out on Google with a similar product, it's a lot harder to fight. Now you need to have your lawyer send a cease and desist letter, and you go down a whole battle of legal litigation kind of stuff, and it's a different thing. So it's really cool that Amazon inside their marketplace is a way
they added the service. That's amazing. And finally, I would like to end this in a way where I want, like, what is our 3 mistakes that you could share with us, and possibly like costly mistakes? I know you shared some here in the sheet, but maybe you can elaborate on 3 of them.
Yeah.
What are some costly mistakes that you've made that we can learn from?
Yeah, I think one on the manufacturing, we'll start there. Having them in our case do more. Like I didn't realize, the manufacturer for us is stamping metal. So in my head, that's what they do. They just make our stamped metal parts and they put them in boxes of 10. They ship them to us. Little did I realize that they can print our instruction manuals. They can create our installation kits with all the screws and stuff and put them into poly bags. They can do all the individual boxings of the products, and they can put on whatever labels you need to put on to have them sent to Amazon. It's one of those, it's like so obvious once they do it, but so for a very long time, I spent way too long doing this stuff by myself or doing it the hard way versus just simply asking, hey, manufacturer, can you help me do X, Y, Z? And even if they, in our case, they had not done a lot of this, but they're there to please. They want to have your business and they want to sell more too. And so they learned a lot of this as we learned a lot of it. So don't hesitate asking your manufacturer to do any of those steps that you need to do to sell your product when it comes to packaging and whatever goes inside that box with the product.
And did it cost you more money to do it on your own versus having the manufacturer?
It cost so much more. It was, buying boxes on Uline's way more than boxes in China. Buying, 10,000 screws and 10,000 this and that, whatever, and hand packing them together. The cost when I was doing the little installation kits, not counting my time, so not counting the hours and hours I spend in my living room weighing screws and putting them in little bags, it was about $5.50 per baggie. When I went to the manufacturer, said, hey, can you make all this stuff and put them in bags and have them all ready to go? Having them send them to me pre-packed was under $2 per baggie. So it's like, wow. It's half the cost and 0 time versus twice the cost and countless time. So yeah, being on your manufacturer, even to this day, I'm still running into that. Like, our next big question to the manufacturer is like, I'm running into an inventory challenge where it's like, I'm glad we're talking about this. This is actually a big challenge too, is FBA, you can only store so much with them, right? I can't just, we sell approximately let's just call it 200 units a month. I can't just send them 5,000 units and have them sit there. But on the flip side, the manufacturer wants to produce 5,000 units once because it's more cost effective, right? Like for them to just set the machine up and jam out the thing versus doing a couple hundred at a time. The product needs to be stored somewhere in the middle ground. And up till now, I've been storing it here in a warehouse in Santa Cruz and handling them. My next step, for instance, is to go to my manufacturer and say, hey, what kind of warehousing in China is available? So once you finish it, you can store it in China. And then when it's time to ship it, that warehousing can send it out. So it's along the same line of thinking of like lean on your manufacturer, let them help you figure out, all these different steps to make it more efficient, because in the end, there's so much to do. And those are things you don't need to be doing or worrying about.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Absolutely. If the manufacturer could help with that, you could ship products fairly quickly rather than wait for manufacturing time plus shipping time. Now you can just deal with shipping time, which is a lot shorter.
Way shorter.
And
let's see, what was some other mistakes here? The outsourcing work was the same. I think also it's along the same line, but you see I have here waited too long for this, waited too long for that. I think you get so caught up in, I love it. It was one of the videos on Helium 10. They have their like little program where they have videos where they talk about very similar stuff to your team about Amazon. And they said one thing was with the owners is don't get stuck in the thick of the thin things. So don't get stuck in the thick of the thin things, and the thin things are all the little like on my desk, I have 50 posts and I thought I got to get back to this manufacturer with this and Amazon with this. And I got to get to my bookkeeper about the inventory that ended in January 3rd. It's all the operational like thin things that like aren't really impacting the business. They're keeping it running. But honestly, I spend all my day in thin things. And the thick things are directly related to sales. What will increase sales? That's what we're doing here. You're trying to increase sales. If what you're doing at that moment is not directly increasing sales, you're not in the thick of it. So don't get caught in the thick of the thin things, be caught in the thick of the thick things. And so I'm trying to work on like parsing my time. Okay, I'm gonna get caught in the weeds over here on bookkeeping, knowing that today is really important. Like talking to you, it was very easy many times to want to postpone this or cancel this because it's just, I got it. But this falls into the thick of things, right? This is exposure for our company, getting out there with, you guys are doing amazing work on the Amazon side of things and growing, our connections. And so this is really important to like do that. So along with that, I think I have here my list of mistakes. I waited too long to start FBA. I waited too long to start global logistics. I waited too long to talk to an Amazon ad specialist because I'm just like, I'll do that tomorrow. Once I started doing those things, it was like, oh my gosh, it just freed up so much time and made things so much more efficient. So, just make the big leap sooner. I think I kind of was like, okay, I'll get to that big leap later, but just, figure out what it takes. There's a reason this stuff is working and other people are doing it. So I think that was I just wait too long. I just get caught. It's almost like the paralysis by analysis, like, oh, I don't know how to figure this out. So figure it out later. But
yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. Freeing up your time is crucial when running a business. That's amazing.
One final thing here I have listed because I said it before, and we all know it. Don't run out of inventory. It's tough. Yeah. Like really, it's worth getting the loans or whatever you need to do. If the sales are there, don't over leverage yourself, but making sure figure out your lead times and get all that set in place. And then one final thing, actually, I have it under interesting facts, which is really cool, is MCF. I don't know if you talk about that much on your channel, but Amazon, Amazon really is as much a logistics freight company as they are a sales marketplace. And, they recognize that companies like mine also sell on Shopify and eBay and other places. And Amazon has come out with MCF, the multi-channel fulfillment. So they know, hey, look, you're going to sell on Shopify anyway. Why don't we get a little piece of the pie too by helping you ship? And at first I was like, all right, Amazon, that's like, you're not, you're overstepping your bounds. Like there's different camps, but quite frankly, it's awesome. So now on my Shopify site, all the products that are listed there, it looks like my own site has nothing to do with Amazon, but when someone buys something on my back end, rather than printing a label or using a 3PL, I just fulfill via Amazon FBA. And so basically with one click, Amazon now fulfills that order. And then, yeah, they charge more than they would if it was an FBA order, but nominally so. It's still, because of their discounts on shipping, because they're Amazon, it's really almost the same. And so Amazon has become my 3PL for my Shopify store, which is a really strange concept. So that would be my other big tip is, taking advantage of their MCF. Again, if you're buying into the whole Amazon ecosystem, if you're not, I've talked to friends that are like, oh, dude, you're getting too deep in Amazon. They're owning everything. And yes, there's a price to all this, but if you're one person by yourself, there's only so much you can do, and leaning on them to do this kind of stuff It's huge.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing that we could do that. We do the same thing with our products on TikTok Shop, and it's incredible. Like, we just use Amazon to ship our products. Like,
Yeah.
imagine how much time you're gonna spend to do it yourself, or hiring a third-party company. It's gonna cost, partially the same, unless, sometimes it is cheaper. You could find something that's a bit lower, but in the beginning, especially, I think it's great, when you're testing the waters, when you're setting it up, while you're growing it, scaling it. Amazon is great for allowing you to do that.
I think that the fear is that, like, you get so, it's kind of like the mafia, you get so deep in with them that, like, I don't know if you could ever decouple that, like, you're kind of like, you're this is kind of they are your supply chain in a lot of ways. And so, that's something. And then final note, I know we're out of time, but the final note is the tariffs. Tariffs are expensive. There, I don't know if people realize this, but there's different tiers of tariff too, depending on what your product is made of. We're in the metal category, which, they're really going after. So we paid, 25% on, whatever our manufacturer is charging us. There's a 25% bill on top of that once it crosses the ocean. So just worth noting. It's a cost that sucks. I'm anti-tariffs. I don't think they solve anything. I don't think all that does is make us raise prices. I don't, there's no metal manufacturer to turn to in America. So I don't know what they're trying to push us to do, but not to get political, but I think, it's just worth noting when you're, manufacturing in China right now, these tariffs are nasty,
I know, yeah, it's just an extra cost, unnecessary cost.
Yeah.
David, I want to thank you so much for coming here and sharing your story, and this is really exciting. Congratulations on all the success.
I appreciate you reaching out and talking to us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was really exciting. It was fun talking with you, and definitely it was quite the journey and great success. There's high demand for your product, so that's pretty cool. That's always exciting when people want to buy your product, and your product is different than everything else. So that's definitely exciting, and I wish you more success, and I can't wait till we film together for the main channel. So that's going to be great as well.
Awesome. Sounds amazing. Can't wait. Well, thanks. Have a great rest of your week.